Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today I will analyze the case of Kirby Carpenter. First I'll look at the background of this case, move to the timeline of the crime, then offer my analysis. Kirby McCord Carpenter was born on May 23, 1986, and was raised in Tupelo, Mississippi. He lived with his father Jerry and his mother Maddie. After graduating from high school, he served in the United States Marine Corps. After this, he lived in Ripley, Mississippi, 46 miles north of Tupelo. Kirby operated a few businesses like liquor stores and a shop that bought gold and silver. It sounds like this was a pawn shop, but Kirby would get angry when people would call it a pawn shop. Kirby was financially successful, eventually becoming a multimillionaire. He was known to be extravagant and accumulated many expensive items like firearms, vehicles, and musical instruments. Kirby was not afraid to show off his wealth, and everybody in town knew who he was. At some point, he had a romantic partner named Whitney. The couple had a son named Towns. Kirby became romantically involved with a woman named Caitlin Spence in 2019. The couple moved in together. They lived in a 2,200 square foot house on County Road 600 in Boonville, Mississippi, 25 miles east of Ripley. In July 2022, the couple had a daughter named Enola. Around this time, Caitlin's parents, Jeff and Karen Spence, who lived in Virginia, visited the family house in Boonville. They were only supposed to stay for a few weeks, but ended up staying for months. Caitlin's father, Jeff, used to own a whitetail deer farm in Reynoldsville, Pennsylvania. Her mother, Karen, had been a school nurse. Jeff had a curious history. He had become a convicted felon by committing a very unusual crime. I will talk about it here because Jeff becomes important to the story later on. In early October 1999, when Jeff lived in Pennsylvania, he visited the Wild Bunch Ranch Deer Farm in Clarion County. While he was there, he took notice of a 2-year-old, 260-pound, 28-point whitetail buck named Goliath. This deer was supposedly worth $1 million or more due to its genetic characteristics. Goliath was in demand for breeding. Many deer aficionados were mesmerized by Goliath. For instance, they were amazed by his huge rack, saying things like, "Do you see the points on that thing?" While looking at Goliath in awe, Jeff allegedly told the owner, "To own a deer like that, it would take my firstborn." He said this as Caitlin was right there with him. He had taken her to see this farm. On October 19, 1999, 2 weeks after Jeff's visit, Goliath went missing. The owner noticed that 2 fences had been cut. It was clear that Goliath had been deer-napped. Around the time of the theft, a neighbor saw a maroon pickup truck in the area, just like the one owned by Jeff. 6 years later, people visiting Jeff's farm spotted a buck that looked like Goliath and notified Goliath's owner. A lawsuit against Jeff followed, and eventually a DNA test proved that buck was Goliath. Jeff was arrested and charged with theft, conspiracy to commit theft, and receiving stolen property. Ultimately, he was convicted and sentenced to 90 days in jail. Jeff always maintained his innocence, claiming that he bought that buck at an auction in Ohio, although he could not remember who sold it to him. Now moving to the timeline of the crime. On Friday, December 2, 2022, at 12:30 p.m., Caitlin Spence called 911 and said that she found her boyfriend, Kirby Carpenter, dead outside the family house. Here is what the police found during the course of their investigation. 36-year-old Kirby Carpenter was dead in a carport area near the garage of his house. His body was covered with a truck toolbox and a curtain. Only his boots were visible. There were drag marks leading up to his body. His pickup truck was in the driveway, the vehicle was locked, and there were groceries inside. Kirby had been shot several times in the chest. The police recovered several buckshot pellets from the scene. These projectiles were delivered with a shotgun or with some other weapon capable of firing shotgun shells, for example, a Taurus Judge revolver. The murder weapon was never recovered. Kirby had $2,800 in cash in his pants pocket. He normally carried a revolver chambered in .22 Winchester Magnum rimfire. The weapon was missing, but 3 cartridges were in his pocket. In his truck, Kirby kept a shoulder bag, which usually contained a large amount of cash. This bag was missing. The police were able to construct a timeline of the events leading up to Kirby's death. On Wednesday, November 30, 2022, just after 6:30 p.m., Caitlin texted Kirby asking where he was. Kirby answered saying he was driving by Gino's tire store in Boonville on his way back to the family house. This meant he was about 15 minutes away. The police believe he arrived home sometime around 7 p.m. At the same time, 7 p.m., Caitlin was captured on video surveillance at the Walmart store in Boonville along with her infant daughter, Enola. When Caitlin exited the store at 7:15 p.m., she remained in her vehicle for 45 minutes. Caitlin claimed that she was breastfeeding her child. She sent a text message to Kirby asking, "Want to order Chinese food?" Kirby never responded. Caitlin returned home later that night. The police believe that Kirby was killed right after he arrived home, which meant that Caitlin was not the shooter. She was at the Walmart during that time. 2 days later, on Friday, December 2, Caitlin found Kirby's body near the carport. She told the police she made this discovery while walking back from a deer stand that she had just checked. According to Caitlin, her parents, Jeff and Karen, left the family home on Tuesday, November 29. Their destination was their home in Virginia. If one were to believe Caitlin's statement, her parents just happened to leave the day before Kirby was murdered. On Saturday, December 3, Jeff and Karen Spence returned to Boonville, Mississippi. The police interviewed Caitlin on December 5. She indicated that on Wednesday, November 30, she, Kirby, and their daughter Enola were sick with the flu. Caitlin did not see Kirby when she arrived home on Wednesday and did not see him all day Thursday. She thought that maybe he went hunting, which is why she walked to the deer stand on Friday. The police had no idea who killed Kirby Carpenter. His murder was a mystery. On December 20, 2022, Caitlin, her daughter, and her parents left Boonville and made their way to Virginia. Caitlin supplied an address in Saltville, Virginia, so child support payments could be mailed to her. Later, she broke off all contact with Kirby's family, so family members requested a welfare check. When the police stopped by the address in Saltville, they discovered the house had been burned to the ground. The only thing left standing was the mailbox. On November 9, 2023, almost a year after Kirby's murder, Jeff paid cash for a home in Pine Grove Township, Pennsylvania. On November 30, 2023, exactly 1 year after Kirby's murder, Caitlin Spence was arrested at her grandmother's house in Brookville, Pennsylvania. Her parents were arrested that same day in Smith County, Virginia. They were charged with capital murder, grand larceny, and conspiracy to commit grand larceny. On April 17, 2025, Caitlin Spence pleaded guilty to accessory to murder after the fact. She agreed to testify against her parents when they are tried together in September 2025. Caitlin will not be sentenced until her parents are tried for murder. She is facing a maximum of 20 years in prison. According to Caitlin, her father Jeff admitted to her that he killed Kirby Carpenter. Caitlin did not take part in the murder at all. She was not involved in the planning. She did not know what her father Jeff was going to do. Even though Caitlin accused her father of murder, she did not implicate her mother, Karen. Now moving to my analysis. Caitlin, Jeff, and Karen maintain their innocence. Caitlin has implicated her father, Jeff, but not her mother. It appears as though the state is satisfied with the theory that Caitlin only functioned as an accessory to murder after the fact. At least, they let her plead guilty to that charge. This brings me to the question, is at least one member of the Spence family guilty of murder? Let's take a look at the evidence both for and against the idea that at least one of them is guilty, starting with the inculpatory factors. Kirby was killed with a weapon capable of discharging shotgun shells. The police found buckshot at the scene, presumably 00 buck. Caitlin was photographed holding a Taurus Judge revolver. This weapon can fire 410 bore shotgun shells. 410 bore shells loaded with 00 buck are available. Whoever murdered Kirby appeared to know a lot about his property. For example, he had valuables stored inside a wall in his house, and someone cut into that wall. The security cameras for his house were disabled at the time of the murder, and Kirby's mother, Maddie, said that after the murder, codes had been changed to multiple safes inside Kirby's house. Caitlin, Jeff, and Karen would have been familiar with Kirby's house because they were living there. Kirby collected many expensive items like precious metals. Right after the murder, Caitlin's father, Jeff, opened a safe deposit box. In this box, there was gold, silver, jewelry, cash, and stamps. In theory, these items could have been obtained legally, like they may not have belonged to Kirby. However, mixed in with these items was a personal check written by Kirby. Furthermore, Kirby's mother, Maddie, saw bags of silver in the trunk of Jeff's Cadillac right after the homicide. Around the time of the murder, Jeff had his cell phone turned off. Jeff was a convicted felon. His criminal history involved stealing something very unusual. Again, a buck named Goliath. Arguably, stealing gold and silver is consistent with this pattern. Caitlin had an alibi for the time of the murder, but it seems convenient that she spent 45 minutes in her vehicle in the area where she knew she would be covered by video surveillance. When Caitlin did not get a response from Kirby on Wednesday night, she did not call the police. Similarly, when she had no contact with him on Thursday, she did not call the police. She only called after finding his body on Friday. Why didn't Caitlin demand a response from Kirby? Why didn't she vigorously attempt to locate him? Caitlin claimed that she thought he may have been in the deer stand not far from their property. Hunters can stay in a deer stand for quite some time, but usually not overnight. Staying overnight twice in a row almost never happens. Caitlin had a motive to commit murder in the form of securing custody of her daughter and obtaining Kirby's property. Jeff and Karen may have had a similar motive. They wanted Caitlin to have her daughter, and they wanted Kirby's property. Caitlin Spence told the authorities that her father, Jeff Spence, admitted to killing Kirby Carpenter. Moving to the exculpatory factors, Caitlin could be lying about what her father said because she wanted to avoid going to trial for capital murder. It's also possible that Jeff admitted to something he didn't do, like he said that he killed Kirby because he was trying to be a tough guy and impress his daughter. It does appear as though the Spence family took Kirby's property, but maybe they didn't kill him. This could have been a crime of opportunity. After somebody else murdered Kirby, the Spence family swooped in and grabbed his valuables. Kirby had definitely put a large target on his back in the community where he lived. He routinely spent time with known criminals. He carried large amounts of cash with him, flaunted his wealth, and had an interest in selling marijuana legally. The police never found the murder weapon. Really, just about anybody in the area could have committed that murder. When considering all the evidence in this case, do I believe that at least one member of the Spence family is guilty of murder? Yes, in my opinion, Jeff is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. As far as the involvement of Caitlin and her mother Karen, I am not convinced beyond a reasonable doubt, but I do believe they are guilty in reality. What do I think happened in this case? This is just a theory, my opinion. Jeff Spence was a loose cannon who was willing to do anything to get what he wanted. He spent a few months in Kirby's house and noticed that Kirby had all kinds of valuable items, including gold and silver. Jeff decided he would like to have Kirby's property, and there was only one way to get it. Kirby had to die. Jeff made Caitlin and Karen aware of his plan, and they fabricated their alibis. Caitlin would be in a Walmart store parking lot. Jeff and Karen would say they left Boonville the day before the murder. Jeff was the shooter. He may have used one of Kirby's weapons to carry out the murder. Caitlin could not call the police right away because Jeff needed time to steal Kirby's property. When the time was right, Caitlin discovered Kirby's body. Not long after this, she and her parents left with his valuables. Again, they went to Virginia. After being arrested, Caitlin was frightened about the prospect of spending her life in prison. She knew that she could implicate her father and get a plea bargain, and that's exactly what she did. This put Jeff in a tough position. If he accuses Caitlin of being a conspirator, then he is admitting to his own guilt. All he can do is deny any involvement. Now moving to my final thoughts. Kirby Carpenter lived a fast-paced and flashy lifestyle. This made him a target, but he probably never believed he would be targeted by someone close to him. Kirby's best move would have been never to allow Jeff to stay in his house, especially considering that he had a bad feeling about Jeff. Kirby could have said something like, "No, the buck stops here." But Jeff was uniquely qualified to overcome that defense. Those are my thoughts on the case of Kirby Carpenter. Thank you so much for watching. I'll talk to you soon.